Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Dan Pontefract. Today, Carolyn Stern. Carolyn's a certified emotional intelligence and leadership development expert, professional speaker, and a university prof. Her emotional intelligence courses and modules have been adopted by top universities across North America. She has also provided comprehensive training programs to business leaders across the continent in highly regarded corporations, encompassing industries such as tech, finance, manufacturing, advertising, education, healthcare, government, and food service. Carolyn's passion is teaching emotional intelligence. We're going to get into that today, but as well, leadership and team building across the workplace. She drives individuals and corporations to learn how to connect authentically, communicate effectively, and thrive collectively by interweaving emotional intelligence along the way. Today, proud to have her on the program because we are talking about her new book, The Emotionally Strong Leader, an inside-out journey to transformational leadership. It's a cracker, I tell you that. I've already had the chance to read it, so I'm one of the lucky ones. So Carolyn, welcome to the show. First question for you. You want to turn leadership on its head. In fact, I would argue you've been doing that across the bulk of your career. So why are emotions the new superpowers?
Well, I wrote the book, Dan, because I was sick and tired of hearing successful leaders like yourself say showing emotions in the workplace was a weakness. So, normally when you see the two words emotional and strong, they sound like contradictory terms, but I really want to let people know that our emotions are the language, the universal language that unites us all. It's a language we can all relate to and can understand. When I say, when was the last time you felt fear? You know what that feels like. When was the last time you were frustrated at work? You know what that feels like. So no matter where you come from, no matter how dispersed, diverse, or digital we are across the globe, I think it's really important that we all kind of speak the same language. And so I was sick and tired of hearing these leaders say that emotions were weak. And so I decided to write a book on why your emotions are actually your superpower if you can learn how to embrace the meaning that they provide us.
So, Carolyn, why is it that we've gotten to this point as we record this, in the second half of 2022? Why did we get here? Why is it that leaders feel as though that emotions are beneath us?
I think it's, people have grown up thinking that you need to be stoic and unflappable and unhindered. And probably the biggest issue that I have to sort of reteach people or get them to unlearn behaviors is that as leaders, you don't need to be the problem-solving hero, right? Your employees come to you and you think you need to have all the answers or you need to be perfect or stoic and you can't show that you've got challenges. No, as a leader, if an employee comes to you, you don't need to give them the answers. In fact, leaders need to remember that they're teachers. So as a university professor, I know the answers to my students' tests, but I don't give them the answers or else they're not learning. Leaders need to do the same thing, that if an employee comes to them with a question, you don't just give them the answers, because what happens is that creates a culture of dependence. People are depending on the leader to answer their problems rather than coming up feeling empowered to figure it out themselves. And as a leader, if you ask really good questions, right? If you ask good coaching questions, what do you think you should do? Then together, the leader and the employee can come up with some really great solutions.
So you mentioned in the book that, emotions are not the enemy, yet far too often, I believe, you have leaders and cultures of organizations whom, ostensibly are asking their employees, in fact, potentially demanding their employees do not bring their emotions into work. So how do we help leaders, I guess, first of all, understand that A, the employee has emotions, get over it. And B, what do we do with those emotions as leaders? Like, tell us, basically the premise that you're trying to concoct here for a new leader mindset.
Yeah. So as you said, your emotions don't have an on and off switch, right? They don't turn off when you get to the office and they don't turn on when you leave the office, right? They're with us all the time. And how people feel at work affects how they perform at work. And so I think it's important that you check in with your employees with how they're feeling. One of the things that I do in my company, for every single meeting we run, we start with a one-word feeling. So what are you feeling? And we go around the room. People don't need to tell us the reason why they're feeling what they're feeling, but they just come up with one word. It's a really fast check-in. It gives me as a leader the temperature of the room. And if anyone says anything that's alarming, like, oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm stressed out, I can circle back to them offline and find out what's going on and how I can support them. I think the other thing, Dan, that I have noticed in all my years of coaching executives is that I think leaders think that they need to be their emotional therapist, and they don't. They really just need to figure out, like, hey, Dan, how are you feeling? Oh, you're feeling overwhelmed? What's going on? What is that feeling telling you about you, Dan? That's my second question that I ask our clients is, what are you feeling? And what is that feeling telling you about you? So if you're feeling overwhelmed, tell me why you're overwhelmed. What's going on for you? What is overwhelming you? And then once you get into the why, where that comes from, then they can be an observer of their emotions. Look from above, almost like a director in a film, so that they can kind of see themselves objectively, rather than letting their emotions take over and letting a fleeting experience define them forever. So it's really taking an objective stance of your emotions. And the challenge is, trust me, I'm trained in elementary. I taught high school for 5 years, and I've been teaching at the university for 25 years. We're not teaching this in schools. I give students stress. I'm not teaching them how to manage that stress. I put them in teams, and I'm not teaching them how to work within those teams, with different personality types, etc. So the key is for them to figure out what they're feeling, what is that feeling telling them about them, and then do something about it.
Well, you've dovetailed into something I wanted to get into, so let's get into it. And that is, like, what are we doing wrong in K-12 and in higher ed to ultimately perhaps not teach, the idea of the importance, if I should say, of emotional intelligence. So before I get back into the organizations and corporations and public sector, let's go back to K-12 or K-16. Like, what is it that you think we should be doing there to begin with?
Absolutely giving them an emotional education from as early as we can. It took me 5 years to lobby at my university to get an emotional intelligence course in the School of Business. And I was turned down for 5 years. Why? Because they didn't think it was academic enough. Yale has a center of emotional intelligence. So you tell me if that's not academic enough. There's a lot of science behind this. This isn't the touchy-feely soft skill stuff. This is really about teaching people the mental skills, cognitive strategies to be bigger than their emotions, to again look at objectively at how they're feeling, why they're feeling what they're feeling. And I don't know about you, but I didn't have superb emotional role models. Did you?
No, most of my role models were robots.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So the challenge is, if you're not learning it at home and we're not teaching them at school, when students are put into a team, for instance, and they come to the teacher and say, oh, I'm having challenges with my team. What did the teacher say? Figure it out. They don't actually sit the two students down. So in my classes, I sit my two students down and say, okay, Johnny, what's going on with you? How are you feeling? What is it? And we have that conversation. I say, okay, Sally, what's going on for you? And we find out, and we have that honest conversation. But these young kids don't know how to do this. And I think what I wrote in the book is that, I was sick and tired of seeing students stressed out and anxious and not thinking clearly, or reacting disrespectfully to a text because they didn't know how to have conversations calmly if they were having interpersonal conflicts, or they were insecure about something, so they didn't speak up or do anything about it. Or maybe they took the lion's share of the work because they weren't assertive enough to sort of set some boundaries and they took a more passive approach. Here's the thing. If we're not teaching these skills in school, it becomes your responsibility as the leader to figure it out. You hire these young kids. They haven't learned these skills. And then what I said in the book is that this now plagues the modern workforce. How many of your workers do take the lion's share of the work when working in teams, don't speak up, maybe don't have the social skills that they need to, are afraid to make mistakes? This is what's happening in the workforce because we're not teaching it in schools.
So we're graduating non-EI graduates into the workforce, complemented by non-EI leaders in the workforce. So it's like an EI persona non grata inside our organization. Great. Okay. Let me ask you this then, because I think we need to dial it back a bit to definition. So you've got IQ, you've got EQ, you've got EI. Tell us what those are and tell us why we should be paying more attention to maybe two of the three.
Yes. So IQ is a numerical value correlated to your traditional intelligence, right? It determines your level of reasoning, your problem solving abilities, right? Your EQ is just a numerical number associated with your emotional intelligence. And a lot of times in literature, EQ and EI are interchangeable. But emotional intelligence is simply just being able to use the information our emotions provide to act appropriately in the face of daily challenges. So it's being able to understand, express, and manage my own emotions. It's being able to have good relationships, mutually satisfying relationships, and build and maintain those relationships. And it's also about thinking clearly and solving problems under pressure. And so what I write in the book is being emotionally intelligent is simply just being intelligent about your emotions.
You make a point in the book really well about empathy and how one's level of empathy can actually be correlated to one's emotional intelligence. So tell us a bit about what you've discovered through the research into empathy. And again, potentially this follow-up question is, well, what do we do about that? How can we, become more empathic?
Well, I think I'll start with that question. I think the way we can become more empathic is that we need to learn to first understand our own emotions. If we're not aware of how we're feeling, how can we then relate and be attuned to how other people are feeling? So it first starts with self-awareness. And this is a really simple exercise that everyone can do every day, is 3 times a day, check in with how you're feeling. I have a poster that we actually is free to download on our website. And it's an emotions poster with about 30 different emotions. And throughout the day, I look at that poster. It's above my desk right now. And I check in. How am I feeling? And then the second question, which I ask throughout the book, is what is that feeling telling me about me? That gives me a lot of information. Empathy is about being attuned to how other people feel, really appreciating and understanding how other people feel. And actually, Dan, what I didn't write in the book, which I'll share with your listeners, is there are 3 types of empathy. There's cognitive empathies, which is perspective taking. I can put myself into your shoes and think how you might be thinking. There's compassionate empathy, which is I feel your pain and I want to help. And then there's affective empathy, which is I feel your pain. And so each of us have maybe one or all 3. And so sometimes I might understand how you're thinking, but I don't understand how you feel because I've never felt that before. Other times I might understand how you feel, but I'm not actually understanding how you think. And other times I might understand how you feel and I really want to help. And so every one of us have different levels of empathy. And the challenges and what's happened during the pandemic, as our stress goes up, our empathy goes down. And so the key is when we're really stressed, we need to remember that I'm feeling stressed, but so are other people. And what stresses me out might not stress you out. And what stressed me out on a Monday might not stress me out on a Friday. And so to realize that all of us deal with the daily challenges differently, we all have a different emotional makeup. You cannot just assume that you handle things the exact same way as I handle them. So really checking in with how you're feeling, how is that feeling affecting how you're performing? How is that feeling affecting how you show up as a leader? But also, how are your people feeling? Because how they feel affects how they perform.
I love, by the way, the answer and also how you brought in the 3 types of empathy. As listeners and readers might know, from my 4th book, Lead, Care, Win, I talk about head, heart, hands, where head is cognitive empathy, heart is the emotional empathy, and hands are the sympathetic or compassionate empathy, whereby you get to do something about it. So we're 2 kindred spirits, Carolyn. It's fantastic.
We are.
I want to know about the F word. So what's the F word? Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, we need to be using it in the workplace, which is feelings. It's not the other F word, but feelings, right? We need to stop being so afraid of feelings. As I said, it's if enemies, the emotions are not the enemies. We need to make friends with our feelings. I guess my question to all of us, to your listeners, to you, why are we so afraid of feelings, right? I think where we're so afraid of it is we're afraid of the consequences. If I share my feelings, it can be used against me. You might resent me for my feelings. It might backfire. But I think it's because we don't have the skills or the confidence to use the skills or the tools to tend to emotions in the workplace. That's what people are afraid of, is they just don't know how to tend to emotions in the workplace, ours or others. And so in the book, that's exactly what I teach people. It's an inside out journey, because I wanted to write my first book. I'm going to follow in your footsteps, Dan, and hopefully write 2 more at least. So it's going to be a trilogy. But the first book is really about you as a leader. It starts with you. So before I can teach you how to lead others, you've got to lead yourself. And the first thing is you've got to figure out, what is your emotional makeup? And, what are you strong in? What are you not so strong in? Every leader that I've met isn't perfect on all 15 different skills. So let's figure out where you land, where are you too much? It's kind of like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Where is it too hot, too cold, or just right? And that's kind of what we do with all 15 different skills. We ask the reader to kind of take them through an assessment to kind of say, hey, I'm strong in this area, but I'm not so strong in this area. I'll use me as an example. I'm really high in flexibility, but I'm on the dark side, which means I'm too flexible, which means I can flip-flop my ideas. If you tell me one thing and another employee tells me another, I might flip-flop my ideas. My low score is I'm low on independence, which means I care too much about what people think. I need more reassurance. So that's not really a great combination. When I'm high in flexibility and low in independence, as a leader, my employees might, sometimes I need to take a stand. I'm not going to always please everyone. I need to be stringent and not care so much about what people think and sort of take a position. And so that's my Achilles heel. That's what I have to work on every day. But yours is going to be different. And so what we do is we get the reader to kind of look at themselves and kind of say, okay, where am I? What am I strong in? What am I not strong in? But the second step we take the readers through is, that's my perception. What if I'm wrong, Dan? What if how I see myself isn't the way other people see me? So then I ask the reader to take themselves and ask others how they perceive them, because I might have the greatest of intentions, but how that lands for other people might be completely different. So the next step is really to connect with others. What do other people think of you? Do they think I'm very flexible, or maybe do they think I'm really rigid? Do they think I care too much about what people think, or do they think I'm really independent? Figuring out where that sort of, once you kind of get that perspective as well as your perspective, then you can clarify your focus and figure out what you need to work on.
And then you go in as my penultimate question, right, to sort of the rest of that workbook and kind of your action plan, right? So you're then talking about, the possibilities and barriers, your action plan, and then, how you close it out. So take us through the rest of the workbook, if you will, and what it is that we need to be doing as individuals.
Yeah. So in the book, I wanted to create, as someone has been a teacher for as long as I have, I wanted to create a workbook within the book. So inside the book, there's worksheets that we take the reader through. But once they figure out connecting with themselves and consulting with others and clarifying what they want to focus on, then they've got to come up with a bunch of possibilities of what they can do to improve their emotional intelligence, but also what's going to get in their way. So the book provides, in chapter 10, we give a slew of suggestions and strategies, but you can also come up with some of your own that work best for you. But we give many in the book, or I give many in the book.
Yep.
And then step 4 is really coming up with that action plan. So here's the difference with an action plan. Most people, most books you've read is, come up with an action plan. But what happens if you relapse? And so in the book, we come up with a relapse prevention plan. What are you going to do if you relapse? Because listen, we're changing behaviors. This is hard. You can teach an old dog new tricks, but for some of us, it takes a bit of time. Right. And just like adult learning, we need repetition, practice, feedback. We need it over and over and over to relearn a habit. And so what we're doing is, if we relapse, how am I going to be aware that I'm relapsing? And then how am I going to get myself back on track? So we work the reader through that. Then what we do is we get them to confirm their commitment. How committed are they? How passionate are they? How motivated are they? They need to tap into their motivation, because you and I both know that unless you're motivated to do something, you're not going to do it. So how motivated? So we tap into what is motivating them to be the best leader that they can be. And then finally, we close the conversation with ourselves and we get an accountability partner. I call it a competency advisor. Who's going to help me? So in my company, Natalie, who's half my age, she's my business development manager. She's my independence competency advisor. When I'm struggling with caring too much about what people think, I pick up the phone and call Natalie, and she walks me off the edge. I think we need to make sure we're accountable to someone inside either our organization or a trusted advisor or friend, so that they can make sure we're staying on track to changing some of these deeply ingrained behaviors.
I love it. Well, this has been fantastic. Last question, where can we find more about the book and Carolyn Stern?
Okay, so you can go on to my website, carolynstern.com. If you go on to carolynstern.com/book, all the information is about the book is on that page. And the book's available in Canada next Tuesday, September 13th, and in the United States, October 4th.
Fantastic. Carolyn Stern, great to see you. Great to hear from you. Congratulations on the book. The book, again, everyone, The Emotionally Strong Leader, an inside-out journey to transformational leadership. You've been listening to me, Dan Pontefract, on Leadership Now with our guest today, Carolyn Stern. Best of luck with the book, Carolyn.
Thanks, Dan, for having me.